it. It's as simple as that. Tradidi quod accepi. I handed down what I received. Not because I'm important, I'm just the instrument, and that's true science. Without tradition, science ceases to exist. It absolutely does. Where do we see this in history? The Roman Empire. The Roman Empire relegated scientific knowledge to few elite circles. And what happened? The Germans came and slit their throats. Who passed it on? Nobody. That's why the medievals were slow in getting to a scientific tradition. For want of desire or thought, nothing was handed down to them except for a scanty few bits which were preserved faithfully by priests and bishops and handed down. And they handed down what they received, and the next generation came up and worked with it, found some more things. Boethius passed on Greek translations of Aristotle. So natural philosophy comes in. The Venerable Bede, right? The monastic scholar in the 7th century, also handed down thoughts from pagan Rome in the ancient world. And some of the work of Pliny the Elder, edited, passed it on. Right? He made some contributions himself. And these basic things kept knowledge, learning, alive. They passed on what they had, and men wanted to know. And they were talking and discussing, and then more came to them, and it continued. So that by the 14th century, scholars are talking about theories of motion and working out different models. For example, heliocentrism didn't start with Copernicus. John Verdun, looking at some Greeks who thought of it, in the 14th century, in a monastery, he was a monk, postulated the possibility of the system. In the end, he sided with the tradition. The Earth's the center. But he appealed and said this is possible. Right? Didn't start with Copernicus. The church didn't burn him. Celebrated him as a great scholar. And all these things, they were passed on. And that's what education has to be geared toward. Passing on the basic ideas of society. The basic bedrock things that every person needs to know for his formation. And then at higher levels, passing on the knowledge he needs to know in his discipline. Right? There's no reason that I should be stuck in Rome learning medicine. It's not because medicine is useless in itself. It's because I have no faculties toward the practice of medicine. I'm sure if I absolutely needed to, I could develop it, but that's not where my talents or my interests lie. Yet we need it, so someone has to learn it. So we apply our disciplines correctly. I sit down and learn those things for which I'm suited. Latin and ancient languages, Latin and Greek. And then, any other things that I can do. It's always good to do more than one thing, all fine and good. That's what society should be aiming at, and it's not. So this system of simplifying, you cut out public education at 8th grade. So by then, you've got the tools to go out in a society and do what you need to do, because that's in the interest of the common good. So you'll have libertarians who say no state funding of any kind, not even at the local level or at the state level, period, for anything. That's absolute hogwash. It's contrary to the Christian and Western tradition of education. Right? I mean, that's getting us right back to the Roman Empire. What happened to the Roman Empire? The common man could not afford education. And education was not funded by the state. It was funded by private people who paid for their kids to learn from a tutor. And that's what you'll end up with, is that an elite will have education and knowledge will not get passed on or disseminate widely. So you do need public education in some degree. But what does it do? Well, it doesn't do all the rot that it does now, and they're requiring community service hours and all this other nonsense. What it should require is that basic core knowledge that was handed down to us. Tradidi quod accepi. Logic, rhetoric, grammar, math, music. Americans can't sing. You ever notice that? The ability to sing is intrinsic to being human. You need that. Musical patrimony to be handed down. And then art is also good. And art can be many things. It doesn't have, finger painting with sister so-and-so. It doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be a matter of what we see now, or working with clay and stuff. It could be about construction and sculpting, for all I care. It's good and useful. Now maybe some would say we don't need that. That could be a local community making that decision. And the only modification I make to the medieval quadrivium is astronomy, per se. Even though it's good and it's useful, I would replace with general science and physical science. Something that every person can stand the use of knowing. At the end of this, or even concurrent with it, say in like the equivalent of 6th grade, we're learning trades. And those who want or desire or go in a different bend have the ability to go do academics. Latin, Greek. You really should have Greek. To learn a different language, different alphabet is very conducive to intellectual talents. Then we have, higher levels of history. Then you go for the sub-Saharan African history, things of that sort. Where previously you're getting you get a basic world history, basic ancient history in the Western tradition, Greece and Rome, Mesopotamia a little bit, Middle Ages, and then American history, which should be prime. Why? Well, I'm not a big fan of American history myself, frankly. But it's good for your natural patrimony to have a decent history, especially of the founding. You need to have at least that. Alright, so all these things being taken into account, what do you get in the technical realm? Well, you get trades. People should know how to, say, wire a house if they had to. It's really not that hard. I mean, if a dope like me could be taught how to do it, then so can a kid. And I've seen children whose fathers taught them how to wire up houses. If they do it correctly, one bulb goes out, they all go out. You don't see that. Plumbing. People should know how to install plumbing. Alright, even something basic as putting in sprinklers. You just run a PVC pipe from a hose outside, or I should say from a faucet, not from a hose, to different levels in the ground. You can have sprinklers running it. Okay, basic plumbing, important. Hanging drywall. Working with heavy power tools. Roofing. I mean, these are all things and trades that need to be done. And that people have a right to make a living off of, rather than some national corporation or things like that. So this is one look at education and its problems. So what are the cost effects ultimately? Well, you take that burden out of the government, which again is a burden from us because it's coming out of tax dollars. The government now has money to provide for actual services it ought to be provided. And then local and state governments pick up the tab, but with the simplified system it now becomes affordable. And they can start giving money back to people in the form of tax breaks. Why does it become simpler? Well, one, you have less years of schooling, more parental involvement, but that's part and parcel to what we're going to talk about next time, the recovery of the family in the running of a third party. So this is Ryan Grant for Athanasius Contra Mundum, my personal blog, the Distributist Review, which I'm kindly welcomed as a contributing editor, and we'll see you next time.